Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for Tuesday or Wednesday or Friday or Saturday or Thursday, but never Monday, because after all, it's your podcast. Joining me today is, you'll always find him in the kitchen at parties, because he's just by himself, but not always by himself, just sometimes by himself. He's, he may have a head in the clouds, but sometimes he's got a feet in the ground. If he was a dinosaur, he'd be a cross between maybe a panda and a tyrannosaurus. He might be a Pandasaurus, who knows? He's not an old man. People might say he's a new man. It's Daniel Newman.
That has to be the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you, Richard.
You're very, very welcome, Daniel. Thank you very, very much for coming on the show. Eventually, it's all good. Yeah. It's all good. How you doing?
I eventually remembered. I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm a good. I'm a 9.2.
Oh, that's good.
It is. That's a
I'm like an 8.4, I think, probably. Just a little.
Yeah, 84. If you were doing a degree, that'd be a pass with distinction. That would probably get you a good. That would probably get you a good.
That's about where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's where we like to be.
All right.
That's where we like to be. We're here to talk about. It's kind of weird because we're in this situation where normally when people come on the show, and thank you everybody for coming in. And the green room is here, and yes, we have brought in some gluten-free biscuits because we did the Kickstarter and it funded a whole pile of gluten-free biscuits, so we've got them everywhere.
A weird stretch goal, but I mean, it wound up being really popular.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I mean, people are contacting me all the time just to help them with their Kickstarters and also various allergies as well. But for people who are joining us for the first time, the reason that we do this is because, well, we're kind of past 250 episodes and it would be rude to stop. Get back. Right, bye.
You've got expectant audience. They want more from you. You can't stop
I wouldn't
now.
entirely go as far as I think there's people that put up with me a lot of the time.
At least like 3 or 4 loyal listeners,
3 or
right?
5.
Oh,
well,
yeah, you're doing great.
Well, no, it's because I get my kids to download the show. Otherwise, they go to their rooms. It's kind of like a punishment thing. It's not very good and it's not very nice, but it's just one of these things that happens. And the other reason that we do this is because whether or not Daniel remembered it or not, we had a conversation. I am going to bring this up. We had a conversation. It's fair and it's true. We had a conversation a while ago about kind of Dead Man's Cabal that was coming on Kickstarter through Pandasaurus. And Pandasaurus are one of my favourite publishers, because I've had John Gilmore on a couple of times, Wasteland Express and obviously Dinosaur Island. So, when you get somebody connected with Pandasaurus Games and there's a chance you want to have a chat with them, then, you obviously, you just kind of say yes. It's just one of these things. But it's interesting because Dead Man's Cabal has finished and it's funded, but that's not the end of the story because there's quite a lot more we can kind of talk about. But what we do want to find out is a little bit about your history with regards to the pressed and printed trees. So we're going to have a look back at the undead of the past before we stare at the party of the present and look off into the cleaning up the living room of the future. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the hobby in the first place, Daniel?
Sure. Yeah. So I started designing games with my wife, actually, because we had at that point, like a 5-year-old, I guess. And we had kind of fallen into a rut of the only time we spent together was like in front of the TV, right? As soon as the kid goes to bed, we're just tired, and that's all we were doing. And occasionally we'd have people over to play games, but it was not that often. And I got the bright idea that maybe we should try designing a game together because we'd been playing them together for a few years.
Did you do that during your courtship then? I mean, when you were courtship, how British of me. My courtship. When you said and you came over and there was Papa just sitting there and he said, "You want to take out my daughter, then you better be making a good thing of her. I want her back at 9:00 at night." But when you were doing the whole dating thing, was that part of your dating thing? Was it kind of like, let's, get together, let's, get the cardboard out and let's have a little bit of fun kind of thing? Was it part of...
So it's funny, we didn't really date so much as we just kind of decided we were together after it was very strange. We went out on like 2 dates and we're like, we're good? We're like, yeah, we're good. And then we moved in together a couple months after. Like, it was really odd. But like, no, I always had, so this would have been, we got together in 1999. 99? 98.
Wow.
98.
Yeah.
I don't know. 99, no. Somewhere in there. It's been like 20 years that we've been together. And it was before I had discovered any, German games. We call them Euros now, I guess. But and I had like Star Wars Monopoly. Like that's what I kept around. And we actually, in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer board game, I remember playing that with her when we were in college. And we had this whole like lore about Star Wars Monopoly that whoever played somebody closer to the dark side would always win. Like the game was just somehow weighted mystically towards so like if it was Darth Vader and Boba Fett, Darth Vader would win, and if it was Luke or Han would win. It was very strange. It never failed.
That's just
so we played a lot of those like kind of weird mass market games. And then once I discovered Settlers Catan in like 2002, 2003, we played a lot of that. We've been together for a while at that point. I guess like 5 years.
Yeah.
So that was something that we would do together. And I actually, when I first moved to New York, we were in Chicago. I moved to New York and I didn't know anybody here. And I just started a game group off of Craigslist. And I was like, hey, I have Settlers Catan if anybody wants to come over and play it. Legit, like this was like 2002, 2003.
Wow.
And that's how I made my first friends in the city.
Was it still like a big thing then? I mean, was Catan... Is Catan...
No, I mean...
Did people kind of go, I know that, or did they go, well, what do you mean? Is it kind of like Monopoly, or,
So these were people who knew the game. Like, it was a posting on Craigslist, like, I want to play this game. Yeah. And if they didn't know the game, they wouldn't respond. I think we had a couple people who were like, well, that sounds interesting, and they showed up, and then they got into it. And then I met one friend who would just bring over... He had a collection of games. Yeah. Like, he'd been into it for a while. He had actually programmed some online web portal for playing games online. I forget what it's called now.
Okay.
Spiel by Web, I think, or something like that. So he was very involved in the scene at the time. So he would just bring over games, and he introduced me to like Puerto Rico and Power Grid and like all sorts of stuff.
Did anyone kind of just come round and then just start taking their clothes off, thinking it was some kind of weird sex thing?
Luckily, no. No. I was nervous about that. People, just random New York strangers just showing up. But usually if you start with we're playing board games, that kind of weeds out most of the wrong weirdos. He just brings in the good weirdos.
I just wonder how you're going to phrase that.
Yeah. Please make sure you keep your clothes on.
Exactly.
We're really just playing games. So this went on for like a year. I had developed a group, and we would have enough people that we could split up into 2 or 3 groups and play 3 or 4 player games. Which was awesome. And then because it's New York, people just leave. Like, people just move away from the city after a while. Like, it's really hard to maintain friendships over a long time because people just move away.
Oh, right.
So it kind of petered out. Everybody just kind of disappeared at the same time. And then we've made friends here and there, other couples that we've convinced to play games with us and stuff. But back to my origins of game design. So we had been playing games together for a while, and I thought it'd be fun as a creative exercise to, take what we've learned from playing games and actually create one of our own. And I started taking it to a local game meetup. And then I found out through that there was a game design meetup that met at the same place like on the weekend. So I took it to that, and I met a couple of people that I'm still in touch with now. Gil Hova.
Oh yeah, I know.
We do a little name dropping now. We would do some name dropping, right? So Gil Hova, Breaking into Board Games was his.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he was on that. He's no longer there. He's now on Ludology.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, so I met Gil there, and Emerson Matsuchi.
Oh yeah, okay.
Who did Century Spice Road
and
Spectre Ops and all sorts of stuff. And that became, so it started out with my wife and I designing, and then I would go and play test it, and then I would come back and we would talk about it. And eventually, like, it just became obvious that it was becoming more my thing, and my enthusiasm for it was just much greater. So it kind of took off from there, and then all of a sudden I was designing 2 or 3 games at a time and submitting to the Cardboard Edison Award, which I was a finalist, and then submitted something to Button Shy after talking to him about what he was looking for, because he was pivoting from doing these kind of simple 18-card games. He wanted to do something more with the format.
Yeah.
And I was eager to work with him because I had met him at a convention, and he seemed like a cool dude, and I liked what he was doing. So I was like, well, what are you looking for? He's like, I'd really love to do an 18-card, like, tight Euro. I was like, that seems insane. But I actually have this design that I think I could convert from this, like, from this giant, like, tile laying, worker placement kind of thing, and I think I can make it like 18 cards. And I figured it out, and I pitched it to him, and he rolled with it. So
okay,
that was my first published game.
What game was that?
That was Ahead in the Clouds.
So what was the reset? Was it strange to go from kind of like just having ideas to actually having something kind of fully published? Because I know a lot of people that they've ideas and they've got notepads and they've got post-it notes, and some of them have even gotten as far as kind of prototypes. But to take it to kind of like that extra step, when you get into the design thing, is it a completely different section of the community that you kind of get involved in? Do you step away?
Oh,
do you step away from kind of like the player thing? Because I kind of view the whole board game community as like a kind of a series of rooms that connect to each other, and you're kind of aware of the different rooms. But it's only when you get into that particular room that you realize kind of what is involved. It's like, as somebody who, with me recording the podcast, I am aware of everybody that's kind of involved in my space. But when I first got started into it, I wasn't aware of all of the podcasts that were kind of going on. You know what I mean? And I'm wondering, with the designer kind of thing, if you're only really become aware of everybody who's involved in their space and how they interact with each other, and how, communicating with one person allows you to communicate with a different person and gets kind of help, and who moves in whose circles and who speaks to each other and works with each other and things like that as well. And is that how you kind of found it kind of worked, that just getting in with like Button Shy, it opened up the opportunities that were available to you? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, publishers pay a lot more attention once you've got a credit, right? Once they know that you've gone through the process and you're not, kind of a pain in the ass to work with. There's somebody can vouch for you, You've got something on your resume. It's easier to get a job.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So
that and the being a Cardboard Edison finalist, I think also kind of helped, because that got me in front of some publishers and opened some doors for me in terms of just people knowing my name. And then once I discovered the board game community on Twitter, that was huge. It was really a combination of that, and then starting to go to conventions. And now I just feel like I know everybody in the industry at this point, at least on the kind of the East Coast, or the folks that go to Origins and BGG and stuff.
So, did you decide, right, okay, I'm going to move up now I've got the game published, now I've got Ahead in the Clouds kind of going? Was it the case of, well, what can I do next? Did you already have, with you working, closely with your wife, did you already have like a couple of things that you could do that you were ready to pitch your next level? From you as a designer, do you have like kind of 15 or 20 different projects working alongside each other, or are you the type of person that you take a project at a time and you work it until it's in the ground and you can decide whether you're going to continue with it or ditch it?
So it's changed, actually. So when I first started, I was working on 3 to 5 games at a time. Because I just had all these ideas, and once I realized I could do it, and it's something that I was decent at, I had all these ideas, and I wanted to get them out, and I just, I would work on 3 or 4 or 5 at a time. Now it's really 1 at a time, and I focus. And I'm also in a situation where I can playtest twice a week with a pretty dedicated group.
Mm-hmm.
And I iterate after every design, so I can spend 4 months on a game, and it'll be pretty close to done if I'm doing my job right.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels better to me to just kind of focus on the one and really get it polished, and then go pitch it. And I know better now who the right people to pitch are for the games that I'm designing, because that's super important. Is finding the right publishers who kind of get what it is you're doing. And then for the kind of games I make, they're kind of these quirky themes on somewhat, it's not standard Euro mechanics, but definitely like Euro-based gameplay. Like there's only a couple of publishers that are even worth me talking to that are interested in those kinds of games, at least in the States. There are a couple publishers in Europe that I need to get to know better. And I've started pitching to them, but it's hard because I haven't met them in person.
Yeah.
It's a little trickier. Like I've developed kind of Twitter relationships with them, and they're always like, "Oh, please send me, everything you're doing." But it's different when you actually can meet with them and show them in person.
Yeah, I guess you can show kind of what you're working and what your ideas are, and it's easier to give kind of direct feedback as well on the kind of the face-to-face thing. And also, not being funny, but sometimes you might meet somebody after a kind of a Twitter conversation and kind of realize you're maybe not the right person to be working with.
Sure.
You do kind of get...
Personality is huge.
Yeah. Especially if you get a clash, or, sometimes it's like you'll meet somebody, you'll be like, wow, this is going to go excellently. And other times you'll be like, am I going to be maybe struggling with this? Are we not kind of maybe seeing everything exactly kind of like the same way? And I'm sure it's kind of any type of creative kind of enterprise, especially if you're kind of doing the online thing. Has that meant you've had to focus primarily on the US kind of publishers then?
So far, I mean, there are a couple of publishers in Europe that I've sent stuff to. Mm-hmm. I actually have one game that's being reviewed by a European publisher right now that he's supposed to be getting back to me today or tomorrow, I think.
Oh, cool.
But he's had really positive things to say. He's like, I want to make sure I give it enough due, but it was one of those conversations where he said, don't sign this without talking to me first. I can't make any promises yet, but I'm really impressed with this. Don't sign it without talking to me.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And I'm looking forward to hearing from him. But yeah, I mean, really, there's only a couple of publishers in the States that I even bother with, because I just know that the kind of games I'm designing just aren't for most companies. Yeah.
Is it still the attraction to stay with the US publishers because of the potential audience reach? Do you think is that a pro to keeping everything in kind of in the US? Because obviously you're we'll look at it this way. My listening figures in the US are greatly outnumber the stuff across the rest of the world, but that's only because it's a bigger country with more people in it. So I've got
there's just more of us here.
Exactly, right? There's just like a more of us here. But I'm just wondering if I suppose it depends on the style of the style of the game.
Absolutely.
As well, and whether you would have the kind of the audience reach kind of going forward.
The cool thing about working with Pandasaurus is that they're very aware of the international market and the potentials in the international market. Mm-hmm. And they were at Essen showing distributors and other, publishers and stuff, Dead Man's Cabal, to try to drum up some interest, overseas. And it was getting some really great feedback and some really great interest. So I'm really curious to see how it does across the pond. Because it has that like Euro sensibility. Mm-hmm. And it may actually do quite well over there. So, I'm not necessarily tied to the U.S. market. If I can sell to European publishers and it'll do well over there, then
yeah,
I'm all for that.
Yeah. How did the relationship come around with Pandasaurus and Dead Man's Cabal? Did you go to them with Dead Man's Cabal and say, look, here it is, what do you think? Or had you been chatting to them with, kind of for some time? I mean, had you shown them like a head in the clouds, feet on the ground,
No, so it's funny. That was, I saw that they were taking appointments at Origins, and I was going to go to Origins, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to pitch to them, but they seemed like a really interesting company, and I really liked the look of Wasteland Express delivery service, which is just, it seemed crazy. And I had this game, Dead Man. At the time, it was called Dead Man's Party, and it was just really kind of quirky and weird. And I wasn't sure if anybody was going to be interested in it because it was just a little strange. But I was like, you know what? I'll just show it to them, and I'll just tell them that it's not. I wasn't planning on pitching it. I thought it needed maybe some more work, but I was like, I have this meeting. I think this would be a cool game to show them. Let me just go ahead and show them, and then I've gotten a face-to-face meeting with them. Let's see what happens. And I showed it to them, and they kind of loved it. And I said, let me think about it. Let me take a couple more months to work on it. If you guys are interested, let's talk again at Gen Con. So we met at Gen Con, and then they decided they were going to sign it just a few months later. So it was kind of a random thing. I just knew them by their reputation and the other games they'd put out, but I hadn't really talked to them at all. Now they're the first company I go to at this point because I feel like they really get what it is I'm doing, and our sense of humor is aligned. Senses of humor aligned.
Yeah. How did you feel when you kind of like they said, right, we want, we're just going to take this? Based on the fact that the stuff before was a little bit not as big, I would say. Was you kind of like a validation as a game designer, I guess, that you'd present?
Sure, yeah. I mean, this was one of the first games that I felt very confident and very proud of. Like, this was the game I've been wanting to design for the last couple of years, right? Because I had designed a bunch of other games before that, and they were good, but maybe not great, and maybe they felt a little too influenced by games from 5 or 10 years ago. And this one I felt I was really proud of, and I wanted to make sure it found a good home, so that when they were ready to take it, that was great. And I think it was the first time I got an advance for a game as well, which is really exciting. So yeah, no, it was a big deal. And then seeing it up on Kickstarter was even crazier. Just driving it home that it's going to be a real thing,
But I mean, how involved were you when you're signing it over to Pandasaurus? Were you kind of still staying involved with the rest of the development process? Did they have an awful lot to do? I mean, the game that you handed over to them when they signed it for you, is there a big difference between the final version of the game that's going to be going out to, say, the backers?
I'd say it's probably 85 to 90% the same game.
All right, okay.
They brought John Gilmore on to do development for it.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And he made some tweaks, and I was totally on board with those tweaks. And then he added on this whole other kind of secondary economy that wasn't there before, and I freaked out because I was like, "Well, I didn't design this. What is this? I don't know what this is doing. This is weird." Turns out it was perfect for what they wanted it to do, and I had to kind of come to terms with it. And then once I realized, and it actually made it a little more accessible for a slightly lighter. It made the game a little bit lighter, because what I had designed had a bit of a punishing element to it, in that you were spending points in order to do extra actions instead of earning, an extra resource in order to take extra actions, right? So it's a little friendlier now. But yeah, I mean, that's really everything else was just minor adjustments to the system that I had designed. Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, was it cool to have somebody like John kind of working on the game?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that was great. He was super cool. And then, and I can trust John. Like, he has a reputation in the industry.
Yeah.
I know he knows what he's doing. I could kind of, at some point I just kind of backed off and I was like, look, I don't want my ego to get in the way. I'm just going to trust that you guys are going to handle this, and I'll just step back and let me know when it's done. Yeah.
I think you have to let it go at the door. Because otherwise, you start to interfere with the project where they know you have a vision, and sometimes I think with anything like this, you have to accept that somebody slightly different vision is maybe going to make things kind of make it work and kind of make it be kind of more accessible, which is always kind of cool. Yep. What about in terms of the Kickstarter and things like that? Were you involved in the kind of putting together the campaign or anything like that, kind of helping with writing the copy, building noise? I mean, anything along those lines?
So the Kickstarter was funny. It was not originally supposed to go on a Kickstarter. It was going to go straight into retail.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the first samples of the plastic bits and realized they were too small.
All right.
So they went back and said, we got to make these bigger. They got a revised mold costs, and it was about 4 times what they expected. So they're like, well, let's throw this up on Kickstarter, do a pre-order campaign. That way we'll make sure we have the money for the molds and not, because I'm a gamble, right? Like, I'm not a big name designer, and I understand they didn't want to put out a ton of money up front, and then if it doesn't go well, that's not good for anybody. So they emailed me about a week before they were going to do the Kickstarter campaign. They're like, look, we could either do a Kickstarter, which I know you're not crazy about, neither are we. That wasn't the plan. In order to get these molds and make sure we can get all the cool plastic in there, or we could skip the Kickstarter and make it all punch board. And I'm like, well, no, you have to do the Kickstarter. we got to make it look good. Yeah. Like, so, and they said, like, you can be involved as little or as much as you want.
Yeah.
Because I know this wasn't part of the deal, but whatever, let us know what you want to do. So I was like, well, I don't really want to do anything. But then once it started going, I couldn't help myself, right? Like, you get wrapped up in it. And it's my first big game on Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started reaching out to people, friends I have with podcasts, and was like, hey, if anybody wants to have me on, I could talk about my thing.
Yeah.
And then then I was, very active in the comments and all of that, and trying to keep the hype up.
Well, yeah, it's protecting it as well. It's kind of like, if somebody's
absolutely.
asking a question and asking a question, it's like, well, I can wait with the greatest will for somebody from the Pandasaurus team to kind of like jump in and answer this question, or I can jump in and kind of answer the question, but I can also add some additional value to the answer that I give,
right,
just to kind of confirm that they're going to really, really enjoy the game. And you probably had, I take it that you kind of got to experience what it was like being in a kind of the Kickstarter community type thing as well, which becomes like a miniature community. It's really, really,
it does, yeah,
kind of strange.
I was pretty involved in the Ahead in the Clouds Kickstarter also.
Yeah.
So I was somewhat familiar, but it was a completely different scale. Like, that was about a $10,000 Kickstarter, I think. Yeah. As opposed to a nearly 60. So it felt very different.
Different number of backers, and I think different kind of expectation as well. And also, I think with something like this, where you've got Pandasaurus that will have already successfully created a number of Kickstarters before them, you're going to get like returning backers and things like that. You're going to have people that are going to have kind of certain expectations and things like that as well. So was it kind of...
That's what was crazy, was they did not advertise the Kickstarter at all. There was no buzz. They didn't send out any review copies, which made me very nervous. But they basically just relied on their mailing list. So their previous backers, especially Dinosaur Island backers. And in the first few comments, you could see that it was Dinosaur Island folks who were jumping on. They're like, I love Dinosaur Island. Can't wait for this. Looks great.
Mm-hmm.
And that started the whole kind of the hype process. And then, they set the goal fairly low so that it would fund quickly, and psychologically people want to jump on once they see that it's funded quickly. And they managed it really well, considering they didn't do any kind of marketing ahead of it.
Yeah, but I think I see that quite a lot now. I keep mentioning kind of, and I'm not getting paid by them at all, but Alley Cat Games are one of these publishers that kind of seem to be producing game after game after game. They've got a game at the moment. They've got like a Chocolate Factory game at the moment that they've got. They had Coral, I think Coral Island or something. The other month they had Welcome to. It wasn't Welcome to. It was a roll and write kind of Dinosaur Island type game.
Okay.
Working with Dino World, basically. I think it was.
That was the Gen Cant winner.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it had like David Terzi from Anachrony kind of involved in that. And I mean, so I mean, there's like Pandasaurus seem to be building a reputation for kind of bringing games to Kickstarter. They seem to be good quality games. but not necessarily games that fall in the same genre. As in, they obviously did Dinosaur Island, but if you put Wasteland Express Delivery Service and Machikoro and Dinosaur Island next to each other,
they're very
games, very, very kind of different games. So it's almost a case that, the guys, and it's the same with Alley Cat games. I mean, they've got, as I say, they've got like Dice Hospital as well, which is just a completely kind of different. It's almost like we're not just going to be known for a particular genre or style of game. We want to be known as somebody that takes a genre of game and give it the best kind of lick of paint and game that we can kind of bring to yourself.
And I think one of the cool things that Pandasaurus does too is they're willing to take some risks.
Yes.
Right? Like the artwork for Wasteland Express is bonkers and just totally out there.
Oh yeah.
And especially for, I mean, I guess it's almost adding like an American sensibility to more European style games, right? Which is kind of what I'm doing as well, which is why it's such a good fit for me working with them. But yeah, so I mean, it was that's what drew me to them. Like all of the things they pick are just solid games that do something a little weird, and I think that's pretty great.
Let's talk about Dead Man's Cabal, because I mean, one of the things you've said, well, the Kickstarter was to help pay for certain costs and things like that kind of turned up with the campaign.
Yep.
And when we were talking originally, you did say that the game is going to be kind of available through retail, so that the aim is to have kind of like the same kind of tail that Machikoro, Dinosaur Island, Wasteland Express all have, that they're available to kind of buy. So do you want to tell us a little bit about for everybody who and I was like to say, you can say, oh, well, for everybody who's been living under a rock, but it's like, well, for everybody, maybe for everybody that's gone on Kickstarter and been aware that at any one time there's like about 40 projects on Kickstarter.
Oh, no, it's ridiculous.
It's like about 500 or something last time I checked, and it's just like you can see. But from what I can tell, Dead Man's Cabal is my life, basically. It's my inability to think at some point in my life I'm going to throw a party, and that lots of people are going to turn up, and that probably actually what I'll need to do is I'll need to invent friends to have them come down. So is that the case? I mean, is this basically autobiography of me?
Yeah, I mean, I installed cameras in your house. No.
I just go on the live feed, It's like, it's glitter hour tonight, so, stay tuned. But anyway, as we're saying, tell me, but please rescue me.
So what exactly are you asking? You want to know about what the game's about?
Please, please, yeah, rescue me.
Okay. Okay. So in Dead Man's Cabal, you are a lonely necromancer wanting to throw a party, except because you're a necromancer and you dig up the dead and you smell kind of bad. You don't have any friends, so you're deciding to raise friends from the dead to fill out your party.
Yeah,
and so you're raising partiers from different eras, and all the character cards have different kind of party stereotypes. So you've got like a punk rocker, and you've got a flapper, and all sorts of stuff. But the way it plays is if you're familiar with Stefan Feld's games, he was a big inspiration for the gameplay in this. Games like Trajan, where you've got several different things that you need to coordinate.
Yeah.
And kind of like feed into each other. And if you play the game Ulm, the kind of main action mechanic at Dead Man's Cabal borrowed a bit from this grid in Ulm, where you have to push things through, and that tells you what you can do on your turn. So you've got this grid of skulls, and you draw one from the bag and you push it through, and then one skull pops out and that goes to your supply. And each of the different skull colors correspond to actions you can take. So you're picking an action from what you have in front of you. So you kind of manage your action pool, because if you want to do a specific action and you don't have a skull to do it, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Right. So you can manage those.
Okay.
And then in addition, in the grid, the middle column, whatever the majority of skulls is there, it determines an action that everybody's going to do after you do your action.
Okay.
So you also want to manage that and make sure you're not letting somebody do something that's going to kind of hurt you by giving them an advantage, right? And then in addition, those skulls you're getting are also used to cast the spells to summon the dead. So not only are they for your actions, but they're also a resource to gain points.
So it's kind of like
it's all
mixture, resource management, action. I mean, it sounds kind of like, is it fairly simplistic to learn? I mean, you mentioned Stefan Fell, but I mean, he's famous for kind of like bringing in a mechanic that just runs so smoothly. It's so easy to like kind of pick up the game and then run with it, and then you're just learning the intricacies in order to become strategically better and win. Is that kind of like how you aimed it with Dead Man's Cabal?
That's my goal. Yeah, I mean, as a game designer, I've realized what I like to do. I love playing heavier games, like Stefan Feld, Vitalis Serda, Simone Luciani. Like, I love playing these really crunchy games that you can get into, and then you can play them over and over again, and you'll play it a little differently every time. And there's all these interweaving systems. And what I like to do is take games like that are my inspiration and just make them more accessible and easier for people to get into and play. Like, I like to be able to teach my game in 10 minutes or less and just have you play. Like, all of my rules documents when I'm finished designing are like 4 pages long. So it's about kind of boiling it down to the essentials, but giving you that same experience in, an hour rather than like, 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that it looks striking in terms of how different it looks from kind of like other games that were kind of kicking about. I mean, that's one of the things that kind of stood out. It made me kind of go back again and again and again, because I was like, because the first impression that you get when you look at the graphic is like, is this a dungeon crawler? Because that looks like a kind of a modular board, and then you look at the kind of the sanctum, and it's kind of like that's striking kind of stuff. I mean, was that something that when you were developing the game, I take it, did that kind of artwork, did that come later on? Did you?
Oh yeah. No, that was fully Pandasaurus.
Wow.
And when they first showed me, cause there was no conversation really about what they wanted to do with the art, and then they picked a couple artists and they got this stuff done and they sent it to me. My jaw dropped, and I was like, this is way beyond anything I would have ever expected. Like, it blew me away. So the board art is all Henning Ludvigsen, who had worked for Fantasy Flight.
Yeah.
So he's done those kind of dungeon crawl, kind of things. And he just like, I couldn't believe it. It's just like the colors are so rich and there's so much detail, and like, it's insane. Like, you can't really see the amount of detail that are on those boards from the Kickstarter, but like, they sent me the files and you could zoom in, and it's unbelievable. There's like skulls with party hats and tucked away in corners, and like, it's unreal.
Just a nice little kind of Easter eggs, because the character art, that looks very Wasteland Express delivery service to me.
So that's a totally different person. That was Dennis Midry, I think. He's a French comic book artist. I don't know how they found him, but it's remarkable. And nothing. I haven't seen anything else like that in board games before. So it's super cool. We've gotten a lot of comments that it reminds them of the Gorillaz, the band from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
With the kind of sunken eyes, which is super cool.
It is mega. As I say, it was one of the campaigns that I kind of kept coming back, just because as the kind of the stretch goals were kind of unlocked, they kind of had little kind of bits of additional art coming up, and I am a bit of I'm a total arts kind of sucker. I mean, if a game's got fantastic kind of art, then I'm like, okay, let's see how we can get on with this. When the campaign, the campaign kind of finished, the campaign kind of wrapped up, with it kind of not being funding to get, I guess, the whole game kind of done, has that kind of changed where you are in terms of kind of like fulfillment? I mean, are you still going through a massive kind of manufacturing process? Are we still looking at kind of like months and months away before people are going to be getting their hands on a copy of the game?
No, actually, the plan was always to have it in retail in June.
Right, okay.
And everything's done. Like, all the art's done. The files are prepped. Like, they sent, digital proofs out before we sent them to the manufacturer, like last week. Like, it's ready to go. So it'll be in stores and in hands in June. Like, the plan was always an Origins release. So that's the other crazy thing about this Kickstarter, is the turnaround's gonna be super fast, because it was always just ready to go. It was just, let's make sure we have the money to cover the mold costs, and then we'll push the button.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, as far as I know, it's going out to the manufacturer like in the next couple weeks.
That's kind of impressive for kind of like yourself then, because you'll get known as the guy that kind of did a 6-month Kickstarter, basically.
Yeah, right. Even, what was it? February, March, April, May, June. Yeah, 4 months. It's going to be nuts. But, we spent the last year and a half, 2 years in development and making sure it was perfect before it went out. Like, it was ready. They were ready to send it to the manufacturer. Like, oh, we need to do a quick pre-order so we make sure we can pay for the stuff here. So it was ready to go. So yeah, it's a strange way to use Kickstarter, but they were so upfront about it that like I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I think, and that's important as well. I think Kickstarter's in a funny place at the moment because it's got actual pre-orders on there, and there's kind of still big companies that are using it as essentially a pre-order service, and there's so many games on there, so it's becoming like a crowded marketplace that it's almost like, I've said this before, like the guys that just rock up with an idea just don't seem to be getting anywhere. They just,
No, they can't. The expectations are too high now. Like, it has to be completely polished. I mean, Gil, who's been doing this for a while, put up High Rise kind of in the middle of my campaign. And there were some issues with how he put the campaign together, and, he used a lot of pictures from playtesting with his prototype stuff. And people just didn't get that that wasn't the final. So he didn't get the traction he was hoping for, and had to take it down after a day to kind of retool.
Yeah.
And he was wildly successful with the networks and the expansion for the networks.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So it's not like he's a brand new person, first time out.
Yeah, but it's also not. It's not like he's not done it before. I mean, it's almost the case like the landscape's completely changed, and people are like, well, so this art's going to get completed. Yeah, this is just placeholder art at the moment. Why? Why is it placeholder art? Why are we?
Right.
Why? It's almost the case of like people are kind of insulted that you're asking them to help you pay for the art. It's like, well,
they just didn't have the imagination to think through what this is going to be like, or the trust. Like, there's no trust, I guess, is really what it is. And like, he was going to put all this extra plastic in it, and the price was really high. So it was a mix of like, he was charging $90.
Yeah.
And he was showing the prototype art that didn't look like it was worth $90.
Yeah.
So it's tough. That's a lot to ask, I think.
Yeah.
Of your backers.
I mean, what about for you then? I mean, in terms of kind of going forward, I mean, you've still got the kind of the excitement of the game arriving, the finished completed product. Yeah. You've then almost got a very, very quick kind of tail that's going to kind of take effect as well. But have you got another game kind of lined up in the works? Is there something else that's going to be coming out of, your design portfolio over the next couple of years? Is this something you're not going to tell us about because you're already speaking at Pandasaurus about it? But
I could talk a little bit. I mean, so I have another game that's coming out this year, which has been it hasn't been officially announced, but they've been TMG. So TMG is doing. Let me start over. I designed a roll and write version of Gold West from TMG.
Right. Okay.
I called Rolled West, and I signed it to them, and they've been showing, like, it's been coming back from their mystery package from China videos, so they've been showing it off, so I feel like I can talk about it.
Okay.
But that's supposed to be coming out, I think, this spring as well. There's no official release date. Originally, I think they were talking about an Origins release.
Right.
And they're starting to get manufacturers' proofs back. So I'm hoping that it's fairly close, and it'll probably be out at Origins also. So that'd be crazy to have 2 games debuting at Origins in 1 year.
You're just going to be walking about like head held high.
It's going to be a fun con for me. I'm planning on going.
Yeah.
Just walk around with my games in my hand the whole time, I guess.
Are you going to be like carrying some leaflets around a couple of board games and then keep bumping into people and go, oh, I'm really sorry. Could you just pick that up? Yeah. Oh, no, that's a game that, oh, you might have seen that. It's dead. Yeah, it's Dead Man's Cabal. Oh, yes, it did get funded on Kickstarter. Oh, yes, we did fulfill it after 4 months. Oh, yes, okay. No, that's Roll. Yeah, that's Roll West. Yeah, that's Tasty Minstrel Games. Yeah, you might have heard of them. Is that what you're going to be doing?
I'm gonna get that all. I'm just gonna get it all printed on a T-shirt, so I don't have to talk to anybody, and I can just designer of Dead Man's Cabal and Rolled West. And I'll just walk around
with shades
on the floor.
On. I do. With people come up.
Please don't talk to me.
You'd have bouncers and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I'm planning on hiring a couple of people, one in front, one behind, just to
give you space.
Yeah, exactly. Make room coming through.
Oh, that'd be fun.
No, it's gonna be crazy. I don't know. It's bananas.
Yeah.
And then I have, I signed another game, my game Astrolabe.
Yes.
Which I was working on this year, and that's looking like it's gonna come out around the same time next year. And I've got another couple things I'm working on now. I've got a couple games that are out being reviewed by publishers at the moment. I've got another small 2-player asymmetrical game that I'm working on at the moment. That was actually on my shelf for like a year that I kind of put away because I got stuck with it, and I decided to pull it out again. So I've always got something I'm working on.
So
but yeah, next couple of years could be interesting.
Where are you in terms of? Are you still working as in a job kind of thing, or are you pretty much to the point where you're kind of like, well, I'm just designing some games. I'm gonna get out of bed. I'm gonna design some games, and then I'm gonna playtest some games, and then I'm gonna have some coffee because I need coffee, and then I'm gonna play some more games. Or are you still kind of like 9 to 5 in it, and then running this as a very, very serious hobby?
So it's a kind of a combination. I'm not making a living designing games. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Like that's real hard. But I'm also I'm not working a 9 to 5 job at the moment. My wife actually does pretty well, to the point where I don't really need to work. And I'm doing the stay-at-home dad thing. So I pick up my son. I drop him off in the mornings and I pick him up in the afternoons most days. And then I do the design stuff. I play test twice a week, and then I've actually started picking up some work demoing for a company at conventions.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which is pretty cool, and they're paying for my travel and hotel and an hourly rate while I'm there, so that's kind of neat.
That's good.
And then it just gets me into shows that I wouldn't otherwise go to, which is it's great just for networking and seeing folks I don't get to see very often. So yeah, it's kind of, I'm piecing things together. I've done some light graphic design work for people here and there, just to kind of keep myself busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm in a lucky position that I don't really need to work at the moment. That I'm aware of how lucky I am that's a possibility, and I'm trying to take advantage of it as much as I can.
Yeah. And where are you with kind of like reviews for Dead Man's Cabal? I mean, are there people? I mean, there's obviously some stuff in the Kickstarter campaign, but is that something you guys are now actively going to have to look at, or is there something you're already kind of well on top of before the kind of the retail type release?
I don't think we have review copies to send out yet. I think it's all going to be once the game's in retail. I'm sure people will request them. That's 100% a publisher thing that I'm not really involved with at all.
Right. Okay.
So I haven't really asked them about it. With the podcast stuff, they're like, do as much or as little as you want. We don't expect you to promote your own stuff. But if you want to do it, go for it.
Cool.
So I trust them to do their thing.
Well, it sounds like you're in an interesting place, kind of at the moment in terms of where you are in terms of the design and kind of what you've got kind of coming up in the future. I guess the question is that if for whatever reason Pandasaurus say, okay, Dead Man's Cabal has sold so many copies, we're going for our 5th reprinting now, it's just flying out the door, and to reward you, we're basically going to buy you any 3 board games that you want. Okay?
Sure.
What board games? What 3 would you like? Now, they can be anything, 1st edition, 2nd editions, you can have as many expansions as you want. Pandasaurus, they're sitting round. John Gilmore, he's sitting there, he's grinning away, and he's saying whatever you want, you can have. What 3 games would you have, Daniel?
Oh, that is a good question. I keep a wish list on BGG. Let me just pull it up.
That's cheating.
Because I can't remember these
That's
things.
cheating.
Come on.
Cheating.
Cheater. I'm gonna cheat.
That is.
It's fine. I've earned it.
Cheating.
Okay. All right. So I'm just looking. Okay. So Ginkgopolis is probably one of those three, which is super hard to find. It's been out of print
for ages.
I think since it came out in 2012, right?
Yeah.
I've been able to play it a couple times. Super cool. I would love to have a copy of that. Beyond that, there isn't a ton. I have most of what I want at this point. There are a couple of newer games that just came out that aren't available in the United States. One of them I played at BGG, and it's fantastic. And if I wanted to buy it, it would have cost me like $140, and I was not interested in spending.
And what was that?
Smartphone Inc.
You need to have a word with Mike Delisio of Solo Mode Games, because he recently told a tale, and you can listen to, I think it's one of the recent episodes of Sporadically Bored, which him and Dan Hughes are on, and he spoke about the tale of tracking down a copy of Smartphone Inc. and basically having to trade like several games plus some money. Plus he's like, this is, do you like this wristwatch? It's like,
what else can I do?
It's a Casio.
How can I get you in this car? So I got to play it at BGG and it was fantastic. And then I heard how much it was and how hard it was to get. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I'm hoping for a reprint. And I did hear a rumor that they're working on some US distribution. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Well, I started that rumor because I thought it'd be an evil. It'd be an evil thing to do. So no. Okay. Third game.
Third game.
This is a difficult one.
Okay.
Everything else is easy.
So, I know. First two are easy. So, there are a couple. I think I'm going to go with Billabong.
Okay.
It's a kind of an abstract game from 1995 where you are playing... every player has a team of kangaroos and you can only move by kind of slingshotting around other kangaroos. You're trying to go in a circle, and there's a little pond in the middle. And so if there's a kangaroo that's exactly 5 spaces away from you, then you can jump 5 spaces in front of it.
All right, okay.
And you're just trying to move your way around this circle by hopping, around. And it sounds dreadful, but it's amazing fun. I played it at BGG a couple years ago because they have a really great library with a bunch of old out of print games. So finding a copy of that would be pretty amazing. That one's pretty tough.
Excellent.
So Billabong, that's my number 3.
I'll maybe see if Mike Delisio can kind of lend you Smartphone, and never ever.
No, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. However, if he was going to get in contact with you to kind of discuss how many bars of gold it would take to pry it out of his hands, where can we find you on the interweb nets, Mr. Newman?
I mean, the best way is Twitter, because I live there.
Okay.
Especially since I'm at home all day, I'm just on Twitter all day long. I pay rent to Twitter now, but it's at DNLNWMN. That's my name without vowels.
I was going to say my kingdom for a vowel, but obviously you ruined that joke.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. You want to take it again? Should we?
Nah, no,
rewind?
it's fine.
You can edit it
no,
out.
I'm not going to. No, don't edit.
Oh, then my kid will be on the show.
That's fine. It's always good.
Okay.
No,
so the Daniel Newman is a very common name in the United States. I think there are 3 or 4 of them in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
In fact, there was one who had a law office about 3 blocks from my house a couple houses ago.
No way. Has he published the game?
Daniel Newman up on it. I don't think so. I may be the only Daniel Newman game designer.
You better watch out. There's not some kind of strange, dodgy guy walking around kind of Gen Origins and that and Gen Con and stuff later on in the year, kind of claiming, getting all free stuff. He's got a copy of smart
wearing the T-shirt.
Yeah,
he's probably wearing the T-shirt.
Copy of smartphone under his arm because somebody ran up and says, "I listened to you on the We're Not Wizards podcast. I heard you loved smartphone, and I've got 5 copies which I just needed to give you because I played Dead Man's Cabal and I loved it. So there you go. You can have that." And he's just like, "Yeah, rocking it."
Yeah, all right.
So Twitter.
There are 2 actors named Daniel Newman that I've got an email for from people who are very confused.
Really?
So that's
If you want to ever have a laugh, look up. There's a retail store in the UK called John Lewis, and the John Lewis Twitter handle is owned by some guy in I think he's Virginia or something like that.
Oh, no.
So every time over here, John Lewis do a big mad Christmas advert, and so this guy has become famous.
Poor guy gets
harangued. He gets atted at to the moon and back. So that's quite good. Where else can we find you? Does Dead Man's Cabal have a website? Or I suppose Pandasaurus will have a website.
Yeah, I think you can see it at Pandasaurus's Pandasaurus.com.
Awesome.
I believe.
Cool.
They probably have pre-order link up there.
Cool.
And wherever fine games are sold, it should be in retail everywhere, as far as I know.
Fantastic. What we'll do is we'll put the links in the show notes so that we have notes to show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
This has been a lot of fun. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then please go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. You can find us on Instagram, you can find us on our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. You can email us, which is magic@we'renotwizards.com. Yes, I am aware of the irony of the email address. That's why I chose it. You can find us on all these lovely podcast catchers like Stitcher and Spreaker and Castbox, and they're all called Cast, they're all called Box, they're all called something else. I don't know. It's all various confusing things, but you can find us on various podcast catchers of choice. If you have listened along tonight, and there's 2 things you can do if you've enjoyed what you've listened to. The first thing, go and tell somebody, because it helps the podcast grow. The other thing you can do is you can go to Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a subscription, or you can give us a review, or you can give us...
Ooh, can I give you 10 stars?
I wouldn't give us 10 stars because that makes us big-headed. But at the same time...
Okay, because I don't want to give you 1 star either.
No, because that will make me cry. You want to give us something in the middle, like a... like
5.
Yeah.
5 stars is good?
Because,
okay.
It's just a bit average, and because, we're just a little bit average.
That seems reasonable.
But bless you, sir. But the person who's not been average...
I've listened a couple.
You have listened a couple. At least you've listened. At least I get some people that come on and go, "I've not listened to the show. I just want to use you for your listeners. Thank you." But the person who's not been average tonight, rather wonderful, rather fantastic. The man who, if he had a party, then... if you invited everyone you knew, you would see the greatest gift would be from me, and the card attached.
What is the card attached?
It would say, "Thank you for being a friend." It's
right. Which is hilarious because I'm currently doing a Golden Girls puzzle, in my dining room right now. We're about halfway through it.
That's so good.
We got the border done.
That sounds amazing. But the person who's not been average tonight is the wonderful, fantastic Mr. Daniel Newman. Thank you very, very much for coming on. There's only 2 more things to do. First thing, remember, we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Daniel?
No, we are not wizards.
Not wizards. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Daniel. Say goodbye, Daniel.
Goodbye, Daniel.
Every single time. And it's a goodbye from me, remember. Stay safe. Roll 6s, and it's all right to sometimes try and have a get together. It's definitely all right to maybe be a bit sad if not as many people turn up as you thought. It's probably not all right to summon the dead as guests.
No, I do not recommend.
But if you do fancy doing that, 3-4 months time, well, probably actually 4 months time, Dead Man's Cabal will be ready to buy and ready to play and ready to enjoy. But until then, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.